swap your Bronco 2 or your first gen Ranger. I'm going to address this for the last time. Follow me. Okay, so probably twice a week now between Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, I get people messaging me asking all kinds of questions about doing a V8 swap on whatever it is they're working on. Bronco 2's first and second and some third gen Rangers, I guess, would also be in that same group. So I'm going to make a quick video here addressing on what I feel is the best way, the best parts to use to V8 swap these trucks. Now, you may be asking, why do I feel like my opinion matters? Well, I've personally done 4 V8 swaps. This one, my wife's, and 2 others that I've had in the past, and I've helped 3 or 4 other buddies help with their V8 swaps on their Bronco 2s and even an Explorer. So I'm going to go ahead and toot my own horn and say there probably ain't many people more qualified to make this video than myself. Alright, so the first thing I want to address is a lot of people hit me up and they tell me they have a donor vehicle. They have an F-150, they have a Ford Explorer, they have an old Mustang sitting around that they want to use for their donor vehicle to do their swap on their truck. So the problem is there is no one donor vehicle that is the best option to use. To keep this real, the best way to do this is a mix of a lot of different vehicles to get the best results. And I feel like over the years I've figured out what is, and this is what I feel is the best combination of mixing those parts. So if you got an F-150, you got a Mustang or whatever, you're not using all the parts. You're not just pulling a complete drivetrain out of that vehicle and putting it in this. It ain't going to work that way, unfortunately. Now, I'm not talking to you guys that want to do this on a budget. They say, you say you can do this swap for $500 because you already have this vehicle and that vehicle. This video ain't for you. I'm not talking about budgets here. I'm talking about doing this swap the best way possible with the best combination of parts. That's what I'm going to address. So don't get butthurt and say, that I'm crazy, that, oh, you can do it cheaper this way or you can use this part or whatever. I don't care. This is what I have found over 4 different vehicles and helping with 3 or 4 other V8 swap vehicles. These are the parts that I feel work best. Okay, donor vehicles. What is the best combination of parts to use for doing these swaps? I think you need to look for a 5-liter HO motor that has a factory roller cam. Now you can use from 87 to 95 Mustangs. They're all going to basically be the same except for around 92 they switched to hyper-eutectic pistons, where prior to that they all had forged pistons. Obviously the forged piston motor is the better choice. You can use the entire long block from that car with the intake for the EFI, the E7 heads. Probably easier to find these days is a factory V8 Explorer or Mountaineer 5-liter. That is also a good short block. Well, more than just a short block. Really the only thing from that motor that I don't condone using are the factory heads. They are called the GT40P heads. There was a GT40 normal head used on, I think, the first 1.5 years of the V8 Explorer production. Then they went to what they call the P head. The P head has a different spark plug angle that will not work with any swap header or any other factory header, really, without causing major interference between the header tube and the spark plug wire and the spark plug itself. So an Explorer short block is a good choice. You also get the factory Ford GT40 cast intake setup from the Explorer that you can use. That is better than a Fox body Mustang. F-150s, you guys that are talking about you have an F-150 donor, there is no hood clearance here to use those F-150 intake manifolds. So just scratch that off your list. You're not using an F-150 top end on this thing, okay? Unless you want to put a 3, 4, 5-inch body lift on it, go ahead, but you're still going to have interference problems, so forget that. I have in the past used the Fox body front accessory drive. The only problem with that is since the Explorers have come out and people are using those, we've discovered the accessory drive for the Ford Explorer motors is a good couple inches shorter. The harmonic balancer is different, the water pump's different. You have a totally different power steering pump that is better than a Fox body, and you also have a factory 130 amp alternator versus 65 amp for a Fox body. My opinion, you use the Explorer front accessory dress. It gives you way more clearance for the radiator, you get a better pump for the power steering, and you get a better alternator. So you combine those parts with whatever factory roller HO short block that you can find, but I definitely think you want to stick with E7 heads. Avoid the GT40P heads, or like me, you can go to an aftermarket cylinder head. Edelbrock trick flows, I have Ford Motorsport aluminum heads. All of those will not have the spark plug problems that the GT40Ps do. Okay, so no matter what motor you use, you're going to have to relocate the factory oil filter. It interferes right where the power steering, where the gearbox is. So you're going to have to get an oil filter relocation kit. I do not condone buying any of them cheap Transdap oil filter kits that come with the hoses and the worm clamps and all that stuff. The best piece to use, Canton Products makes a billet aluminum adapter block that goes on the engine block. Get some good AN fitting, some good hose. You can run push lock or whatever. And I had the oil filter located right on the bottom of the frame rail on this side of the truck with one of their the adapter that the oil filter screws onto, whatever you want to call it. I've seen guys mount the oil filter up high on the driver's side front corner. I don't like that just because of the oil leaking down on stuff, so I like it over here. But you're gonna have to get a good oil filter block because there is very, very minimal room between the gearbox and that relocation block. So you're gonna have to do that. All right, so as far as a cooling system goes, you got companies like James Duff that sell a V8 swap radiator made to fit in here. Again, if you notice the clearance that you have here, this is the Explorer front accessory drive. Creates a lot of room. I actually even had a mechanical Explorer fan on this for a long time. I just recently upgraded to the electric fan. There's also a company called Northern Products. They sell a V8 swap radiator also. That's also, I know some guys in my circle have used that with good success. Personally, mine is just basically a generic AFCO radiator that just so happens the size fits inside the radiator core. Most of the V8 swap ones will basically fit where this fan is, where mine actually is underneath the core support. I like that. I have lots of additional room here. As far as hoses, you're going to have to come up with your own combination of hoses here. Obviously, mine are all pieced together with a bunch of random pieces that I had, so there is no over-the-counter radiator hose that you're going to be able to buy, so be prepared to just kind of make something of your own. Also, mine, because the radiator is lower than the engine and my core support, the stock radiator cap on the radiator I do not use. This is now the highest part of my cooling system, so I have one of these Moroso remote radiator cap setups on here, and everything works completely fine. Okay, so when you're using an Explorer front accessory dress on these motors, this does not pertain if you want to go the route of using the Fox body front accessories. I don't recommend it, but you can. The TFI module on the distributor has to be relocated. It's a good idea to relocate it anyway because it's in the worst place possible as far as heat soak goes. It's not the best place to put an electrical component. I've made my own harness. I've relocated the TFI module over to the fender apron over there. So we now have the TFI module mounted there, away from the engine, as far away from any heat sources as possible, and to me that's the best place to put it. So if you'll notice though, on my truck I am not using the stock Explorer power steering bracket anymore. This is a Wild Horses Saginaw pump bracket and pump kit. because I have hydro assist. I have a PSC Ram in this truck because it's got 37-inch tires with a locked front end. The stock Explorer power steering bracket would be right here, would interfere with the TFI module. So yes, when you look at mine right now, there's plenty of room for a TFI module here. I just don't want it there. But if I still had the stock Explorer bracket, you would see the obvious interference. So that's why mine is different currently, because I have hydro assist. All right, so the next big thing is headers for these swaps. I see a lot of people always posting questions asking about what's the best header, what can they use. I'm sorry, but there is no cheap way around this to do it right and to do it the best way. Advanced Adapters makes the best V8 swap header for these trucks. Now, I don't know how far into the Ranger production these headers will work. I would assume they're going to work all the way into the mid to late 90 Rangers chassis, because they just fit so well. Everybody says, oh, they look cheap, they're not worth the money, whatever. Bullshit. They are worth every penny, because your only other options, James Duff was making long tube headers for these swaps. I don't think they are anymore. I think I may have found the last used set on the planet a couple years ago for the other truck I'm working on, and I don't even know if I'm going to use them now. I have seen people use factory cast manifolds from like 60s era V8s. They will work, but the only thing is those vehicles that I've seen them on have a 3-inch body lift, because the way the discharge is on the manifold on this side of the truck, it runs right into the floor, or the pinch weld where the floor and the firewall come together. If you put a 3-inch body lift on it, which I'm not a fan of, I have seen exhaust systems being able to snake just past the floor. This truck originally was built with no body lift, so that's not an option. I've had these Advanced Adapters headers on here from day one that I've built this truck. The truck now does have a 1-inch body lift. That still wouldn't help. So I'm sorry, you really can't cheap out on the headers. Advanced Adapters, I think, is the best way to go. Don't mess around, don't waste your time finding old Mustang Tri-Ys and whatever else you guys are talking about out there. Just spend the money and buy the Advanced Adapter log headers and be done with it. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is motor mounts. I basically feel like there are 3 options you have with motor mounts. I hear a lot of people talk about using convertible Mustang Fox body engine mounts in here. I've personally never used them. I don't know really anything about them, so I'm not going to address it. Number 2 option, Rick's Ranger, the plates. He makes a flat plate that'll bolt to the engine block, and it'll sit on top of your existing V6 motor mounts. The advantage to that is price. It is the cheapest way to go, and it has a lot of adjustability in it because the motor mount has a slot in it, so you can create a little bit of room here between the firewall and the bell housing to have access to your bolts. The only downside is you only have so much room before you run into problems with the oil filter adapter to the steering box. That is another way that you can go. Me personally, I have always used James Duff V8 swap motor mounts because I would not use the Rick's mount plate mounts with an old original set of V6 mounts. I would say you would need to at least buy a fresh new mount so the motor's not, loose in there on some, 30, 40-year-old engine mounts at this point. My feeling is if you're going to spend the money to buy the plates and you're going to buy new factory V6 motor mounts, I would much rather just buy the James Duff mounts that have good polyurethane bushings in them and just be done with it. They are definitely built stronger than any of the other 2 options. So my vote will always go towards the James Duff V8 mounts. Another option in a pinch would be the Rick's ones with factory V6 mounts. All right, so the other thing is the heater box. The AC boxes on these things are big and ugly. I have yet to see anybody do the V8 swap and successfully keep the AC system. So to me, I'm not even going to try. It's not an option. I don't care. I have a video on my channel. If you go back, probably 2 years ago worth of videos, showing how I modify, take a notch out of the bottom corner of a non-AC heater box to clear the back corner of the valve cover. It's got to be done. I show a way you can do it nice and clean. I've seen some real hack jobs. I've actually fixed a couple. I can show you how to do it the clean way. Just go back again, look on the channel, you'll find the video for it, as is videos on setting up the motor mounts, where to drill the holes in the frame, putting the motor in the trucks, the accessory drives, all that stuff. I have probably 25 videos of doing a V8 swap on this truck in particular. So as far as the fuel system goes, you're probably gonna have to make your own fuel lines. It's real easy to go buy a spool of that nylon plastic line, and you have fittings through the Help brand, the Dorman brand, and you can make your own fuel lines front to back. These trucks stock prior to would have been 83 Rangers all the way up to 1988 had 2 fuel pumps. It was a low pressure in-tank pump and a high pressure on the frame. I chose to put a 1990 Bronco II gas tank in this truck, which used 1 fuel pump, and that allowed me to use the spot on the frame where the factory high pressure pump was on this truck to just basically snap in a inline factory replacement fuel filter. So it required no modifications. Put a fuel filter in place of the original pump. I now have a Walbro 255 in-tank pump in a 90 gas tank. In a Ranger, you can do the same thing. You just got to have a tank that has, well, actually on a Ranger you could probably still get away with using a 2 fuel pump system. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. My tank had a rust hole in it the size of a Pepsi can, so I was buying a new tank anyway, so I just upgraded to the 90. When doing that though, I did change the gas gauge. Would not work. There is a change around 1988 where Ford changed the ohm readings for the sending units, so this sending unit would not work with my factory gauge, but I will show you how I got around that in a minute. Okay, this one's going to be lengthy. The wiring and the computer system. You have quite a few options when it comes to wiring these trucks. Obviously, if you're going carburetor, very simple. You just need to find the ignition sources in the factory wire harness to power a Duraspark box, MSD box, run to your distributor, and you're good to go. I like EFI. I like to off-road. Carburetors are not the best for off-roading seriously, so I like the EFI. I originally built this truck with a factory computer and wiring harness out of a 86 Mustang GT. It's what they call a speed density computer system. There's no mass air meter on the air inlet. I ran that for a while. The only problem is the speed density from Ford does not compensate for doing engine modifications. So if you were to change the cylinder heads, if you were to put a camshaft in it, when you change how much airflow goes through the motor, that computer system will not compensate. If you have a factory mass air setup, you can get that off of any 88 to 95 Mustang. The wire harnesses will literally lay in here almost like they were made for these trucks as well. They fit very well. Have to relocate, lengthen very few wires anyway to make it work. All the power you need to power up the harness is right over here when you unplug and get rid of all the V6 stuff. So that is the way Dan Bastian did his truck. We did a mass air wire harness swap on his truck. I have since gotten rid of all of the factory Ford wiring and computer systems on this truck, and this has a Ron Francis standalone wire harness made for speed density, and I run this truck on a EFI source plug-and-play micro squirt computer setup. Again, go back a couple years into my videos and I have a video showing how it literally took me 20 minutes to swap this truck over from a factory Ford computer to a micro squirt based computer that I can tune myself on a laptop, or I now have a Raspberry Pi. It's a 7-inch touchscreen computer in the truck that I can tune from there in real time. It shows me everything. I can look at basically the output of every sensor on the truck and pinpoint any problems or know that everything is working like it should. It uses a wideband oxygen sensor, so I know what's going on with my fuel system in real time, whether the truck is too rich, it's too lean. It makes it very nice to getting it dialed in. Computer system for this truck is around $500. The brand new wire harness for this truck is around $500. I probably wasted about 6 months this year fighting an electrical problem with the truck that was traced back to a basically, you know, 35-year-old engine wire harness on this. So if you're gonna go through all the work, spend all the money to do this swap right, I'm at the point now where I recommend buy the brand new Ron Francis wire harness and start off with brand new wiring, brand new connectors. Don't mess around with wiring and plastic plugs that are probably older than you are at this point. So I also get a lot of questions about, as far as when you do the V8 swaps, what do you do about gauges on the truck? You can make all the factory gauges work. You can find the wiring and the chassis harness that would go from the dash to the oil and water sending units on your motor. You can make those work. Like I said, I did the 90 gas tank swap, so my fuel gauge would not work with the 1986 cluster that I had. So my solution is I run Speed Hut gauges. They are all programmable. They don't care what. As far as the fuel sender goes, those are all programmable, so it doesn't matter what sending unit you have. My speedometer is GPS based, so I have a plug in the output of my transfer case. There's no speedo gear, there's no speedometer cable. The speedometer is off GPS signal, so it's always right. It doesn't care what gears I have, it doesn't care what size tires I have. The speedo is always right. I have a video on my channel, not just but a few months ago, where I installed a set of custom Speed Hut gauges in a factory dash, a factory cluster, to make it look as OEM as possible, but have modern, accurate gauges. So you can check that out. This is what I chose to do on my truck. Okay, so next I want to address transmission options. That is literally why I've done 2 V8 swaps on these trucks to start with, is because of the original A4 LDs taking a crap. To me, they are not worth building. I would rather build a drivetrain that eliminates that transmission and do a complete drivetrain swap to get something else. So this truck currently has a C4 automatic. Fits, everything bolts in completely fine. You will have to make your own custom transmission cross member. If you're this deep into a swap, I'm sure you can figure that out. I am using an adapter for an early Bronco 66 to 76 tail housing on my C4, which you can still buy brand new through like Wild Horses and some of the other classic Bronco places, to use a early Bronco Dana 20 cast iron gear-to-gear transfer case. It is a, I'm not going to call it bulletproof, but for these trucks, they're damn near bulletproof. It's a good heavy-duty transfer case. You have the option, you can twin stick them fairly easy. I like them a lot, and I will probably always run them. You can also, Atlas will make one of their transfer cases that will bolt to that same tail housing to take the place of the Dana 20, so you also have that option. If you started off with a truck that was 83 to 86, that was a 2.8 carbureted V6, originally that truck automatic had a C5 automatic in it. You literally can leave your original C5 trans in it by putting a V8 bell housing from a C4 on it and a C4 torque converter, and you can leave your original C5 trans and your original Borg-Warner transfer case in the truck, and you don't have to change drive shafts, you don't have to change shifters, none of that stuff. It'll all work literally with just a bell housing and the right torque converter setup for a 302. That's a really simple setup. Now, I don't know of many people that have done this yet, but I'm getting ready to do an AOD swap. Again, through Wild Horses. They sell Dana 20 tailhouse adapters to run a Dana 20 transfer case. I am going to be venturing into that here next, because although the truck does drive fine, I want to drive it a lot more, and I want overdrive. This thing cruises at 3,500 RPM at like 65 mile an hour right now, which is a bit much for going any kind of distance. You stick shift guys, Also, if you look on my channel, there is a walk around video of, it was my friend Eric's Red Explorer, now owned by another friend of mine, Jason. That truck was a manual. So if you're starting off with a manual Ranger or Bronco II, just by picking up a transmission, it's a M5OD R2. It is from 1997 to 2003 F-150s that had the 4.2 liter V6. Shares the same bell housing bolt pattern as a 302. You can use that manual transmission in these trucks by literally, I think the only thing really custom you're going to end up making is probably the hydraulic clutch line to make it all work with what you got. The only downside to that is I do not believe the factory transfer case that came on that transmission is going to work. So you are basically looking at getting an advanced adapters tail housing to run, again, an early Bronco Dana 20 transfer case. Yep, none of these parts are cheap. This is not a budget build way to go, but the parts are all there to do it right. So you can have a modern 5-speed manual trans with a almost bulletproof cast iron gear to gear transfer case that's still supported. I don't condone using the Borg Warner, the 1350s, 1354s behind a V8. They're not robust enough for that. So there's your option for doing manuals. C4s, AODs. There may be other options out there, you know, adapting a GM trans into these things. I know they do in some of the early Broncos, which would probably carry over to this truck. I've never done it, so I'm not talking about it. So that's what we got here. All right, so that's basically the end of this video. I just wanted to make a quick one that addresses what I feel is the best combination, the best parts to use for these trucks. Again, some of this information is going to transfer over to first-gen Explorers that still had like the Dana 35 TTB front suspensions in them. I can't speak for the second-gen with the IRS setups. Ford Rangers, I don't know, maybe up to like 1997-ish or so, all this information should pertain to as well. Again, these are not, a lot of these things are not budget-friendly options, but they're the best options. So you guys wanted to know my opinion, so here it is. Here's a whole video for you. Everything that I feel is the best way to go. If you got any other questions or anything else, just hit it up down below in the comments, and okay, give it a like if you like it. If not, whatever. Later.